this. So welcome back right into today's session. So with that, let's get started here. What I wanted to go and start with is just another application of where like AI or using algorithms becomes prevalent, because oh my gosh, computers are being used everywhere, including being able to go and generate new DNA sequences out there. So you guys might have heard about CRISPR, which is a technology where you can actually directly edit DNA sequences to go and like cure diseases or get special traits. You can have like glow in the dark animals, for example. But you have to be incredibly careful about trying to figure out how to go and make these changes here. One small change could have huge catastrophic results, which are incredibly hard to trace. And we are using something called Decoder these days that can go and actually quickly detect any changes from these gene edits and give doctors the ability to go and figure out the ability of these changes, if we like them or not, which honestly, I think that is some incredibly cool potential, how computers are getting interwoven in every single part of our lives now. Anywho, with that, let's get started with what today is going to be talking about. So session number 4 here. Today we're going to be covering 2 big topics here. One of them is going to be lists, and the other one is going to be loops. And the two of them really go intertwined hand in hand. So they are a little bit hard to separate into individual pieces. We'll go and quickly cover on the if, elif, and else statements first, just to make sure that you guys are feeling comfy with that. So previously, when I was talking about if and else statements, basically ifs and else statements are the ability to make decisions in your code. And these are probably the most basic form of decision making and most common form of decision making that you will see. So we see that if mouse y is lesser than 500, that's our first block of code that's going to happen here. It's going to go and color our ball red. And then you have the next block that goes immediately triggers afterwards. And you say else, if the first statement failed, but now we are going to go and try this new one here. We're going to go and try elif mouse x is lesser than 500. That only runs if the if statement failed, and then we'll color it green. Else is the statement that runs when none of them, neither if nor elif nor any of the other chained theoretical elif statements fits. And this is the one where we see that we go and color it blue, which if I'm not mistaken, I think that we actually have the colors mixed up in this diagram here. So we'll have to go and get around to fixing that. Finally, the last part to emphasize is that if you see this piece of code down here where it's not indented in like the rest of it here, this code represents that it'll run no matter what. It always runs after the rest of this stuff runs. In the meanwhile, I also wanted to go and quickly talk about the logical operators. So the AND operator, the OR operator, the NOT operator, these are all pretty important to know, but luckily they're not that difficult to wrap your head around. So it basically says if part 1 and part 2 are true and together, then we're going to say it's true. If any piece is missing, then the entire thing is false. So yeah, if 5 is greater than 3 and 6 is greater than 3, then we will run some code. Yes, that's true. 5 is greater than 3 and 6 is less than 3. Well, only one of these are true. So therefore, collectively, they're all false. Or is the opposite version of this, where it says that if at least one of these are true, then we're good to go on this. So we can see right here, that's like 5 is greater than 3, or 6 is lesser than 3. Ooh, gotta be careful about all these signs here. We say that at least one of these are true. So in total, this is a true statement. And then not is an inverting statement. I am going to quickly jump straight into lists, but if you guys are following along with the slides, you can find an exercise there just to go and test your abilities on your own time. So I'm going to jump into lists here, and lists are basically a pretty darn simple concept where you basically go and rattle out a whole bunch of things on, well, like a list. You might hear another name if you come from a different programming language called arrays. And for the purposes of Python today, we're going to say that those are basically the same thing, and we're going to ignore any differences between the two. And so a list, for example, I have a list of students here that I can be talking about. So just reading off alphabetically, I have the students Albert, Brittany, Daniel, Faith, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I can have a list as long as I like. Or on my screen, you guys can see a list of strings named students: Henry, Alice, Jack, Alex, Carrie, et cetera, et cetera. And when it comes to making a list, what we're going to do is use the square brackets. So let's just jump into programming land over here. I got myself a new trinket, and I'm going to go and say, let's go and copy this example here. We're going to go and create some numbers here. So I'm going to call them my numbers, and I'm going to equal, and I'm going to press the square bracket symbol. and that's going to go and open up square bracket on either side. And let's go and punch in some numbers inside here. So I'm going to go 101, 202, negative 303, 505, etc. And I can just go and punch in these things along the way here. You notice that, of course, we're going to use commas to go and separate every single entry here. If you really want, you can also say that spaces should be in there. I personally think that it looks much neater. And this is how we basically go and build up our list. Of course, I can go and do our students example too. So I can go students is equal to, oops, let me use the double quotes, Henry, comma, double quotes, Alex, comma, double quotes. We'll just go with Jane, etc. You can go and add in all the entries you want. Pay attention, of course, that each one of these individual entries here, they are like a variable's the wrong word, but they are effectively a value. So you got negative 303 or you got Alex, and each one of these are standalone values, which actually comes pretty darn useful to keep track of because we want to go and be able to, well, a list is nice and all, but how do we actually interact with the list? And the way that we interact with lists is that we go and talk about grabbing them based on their index. Index is a really fancy way of just saying what number of entry they are on the list here. So we got an index of 0, 1, 2, 3, holding on to the values for my list of 101, negative 2, 303, 44. Let me just go and quickly type up this example here. And I'll stick with my numbers. That looks like a rather convenient name to stick with. And I'm going to go and use these exact numbers. Negative 101, negative 2, 303, 303, 44. Now, the really interesting thing here is the first number belongs to index 0. And this is going to be another one of those things I want you guys to type out with me. But first, let me just show you what that means. So I'm just going to say, let's get that first number out as a variable. So I'll go first number, and that is set to the value of my numbers. And I'm going to yoink it out of there. I'm going to use a square brackets to say, please grab it based on its index, and I'm going to use number 0. So I'm going to print first number. And when we print this, we're going to go and get 101, the first number. What that really means is I want to go and emphasize very importantly, this is number 0, this is number 1, this is number 2, and this is number 3, which for some of you guys there, I think that the appropriate reaction is, what the heck is going on? Why am I insisting on using the number 0? The answer mostly is an old-fashioned because programming has been set up this way, historically speaking. And there's some programming languages that ignore this and start with number 1 as more civilized people would say. But I personally really do like the fact that it starts with the number 0. And the reason for this really does come down to a whole bunch of little math tricks behind the scenes that, don't worry, you guys don't need to know about, but it is just kind of nice to know. Anyway, I do want you guys to go and type out with me. The first number belongs to the index 0. Can you guys all do me a favor? Type that straight into chat. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Perfect. You guys always will need to remember that. And it's something that even as me, somebody who has been programming for years now, I constantly need to go and count. It's like, oh, hang on, that's the third item on my list here. So that's going to be 0, 1, 2. It's a little bit weird, but yes, keep in mind that very commonly in lots of programming languages, the first number belongs to the index 0. Let's carry on now. Okay, so when we were using our list here, basically what I wanted to go and show you was a pretty simple example of basically how you can access any single number here, and it basically gets treated like a value. So first number, that's the same thing as typing first number is set to 101. Likewise, if I said, excuse me, second number is set to the value of my numbers 1, then that's basically equivalent to saying second number is equal to the value of negative, sorry, wrong word there, is set to the value of negative 2. You're basically able to go and grab these. And so these here each one of these, you can think of this as a variable. It is just a variable where instead of having a unique name for every single one and lots of typing, you can just simply go and use the list instead, which has some pretty good potential for writing up lots of things. I'm going to go and get rid of this line here just because I don't want to go and get our code a little bit confused. But I can go and show you here that I can go and draw stuff as well. So I'm going to get rid of all that stuff. From processing, import star def setup, open round bracket, close round bracket, colons. We'll just use our usual size 500, 500, def draw round brackets, colon, and then we'll go and say background, and I'll just set it to some default background. And if we go and create myself a list of numbers here, so maybe I'm feeling a little bit lazy, so I'm just going to copy paste these lines directly. I got my numbers here. And when I go and use these numbers, I can go and set them up to be the values that show up inside of an ellipse. So when I run this code here, we can see once that thing runs properly, let's check. Oh, of course, I knew I forgot something. You type in the word run at the end, and that would help a lot. And there you go. We see that ellipse says for the x coordinates, use numbers 0. That is 75. For the y coordinate, use numbers 1. That's 100. Numbers 2 is going to be 50. Numbers 3 is going to be 40. Okay, excellent. And with that, carrying on, I want to go and quickly also talk about how to go and modify a list. So if you want to go and change numbers as well, it's just as simple as changing a variable. You guys should be pretty familiar with this concept. So let's go and say, I don't really like 75 pixels here. Let's go and bump it over to maybe 200. The way I do that is I'm going to say, change the number at index 0, aka change the first number. And we're going to go numbers at number 0 here is set to the value of 200. Run that code. And you're going to see that the new ellipse position is going to be shifted over, set to that value of 200, which in my opinion is a pretty darn simple thing to keep track of here. It's just the hardest part is just learning where those square brackets belong. All right, with that, let's jump into our first quick question. So basically, I want you guys to read this over very carefully, remember what the number 0 means on that, and tell me what's the diameter of this ellipse going to be. All right, minute 30 seconds. Oops, that's not helpful.
Okay, I will close the poll now. And the most popular answer was 60 with 43% of people answering it.
Ooh, interesting. This is the first time I think I've seen where the most popular answer is not the correct answer. Let's go and figure out what happened real quick. My bet is that a few people saw this number 1 here and they got a little bit confused on that, because my bet is that you guys assume that x1 is relating to the number 20. And so you say 20 plus 10, okay, that's going to be 30. And we're going to set x1 to be that value again. And then you said that you'd take x3, you go and say, well, we're going to set it to the value of, aka we don't even need to read the number here, of x1, which is 30, times 2, which is 60. And then we use that number down here. But let's go and see what happens inside the code when we try that. So let me go and just change this out. And we're going to go x is set to the value of 20, 40, 60, and 80. 20, 40, 60, 80. And then we're going to go x set value of 1, or an index of 1 is going to be set to x index of 1 plus 10. And then x index of 3 is set to the value of x index of 1 multiplied by 2. And then let me just go and remove all this stuff here. The only thing we really care about is printing the value of x3. So let's just do that instead for convenience. Print x at 3. When we run this code here, what's going to show up is not 60, but it's going to be 100 instead. Now, how the heck did that happen? Why is that? Well, because it comes down to one very, very important detail here. A list starts at the index 0. And I think that's a couple people have already fallen for this trap. Basically, the number x1 here is not 20. No, that's index number 0. Index number 1 is actually 40. So 40 plus 10 is 50. 50 times 2 is 100. So little details like that, it's going to go and really be annoying trying to learn how these work here. But I promise you that it is a lot better if you could remember that the first number belongs at index 0. Let's carry on. I'm going to quickly talk about a couple operations here. You guys are going to be using the word append quite often. So let's say I have a shopping list here, and then I get a phone call when I'm at the store saying, hey, you got the eggs, ham, cheese, and onions, but can you please get some milk and bread? We're going to use the .append function to go and do that. So let's go and quickly show that off. I am going to go and wipe that out, and I'm going to say that shopping list. I'm just going to go and type in the first item or first two items. I don't need them all. Eggs, ham. And when I say shopping list, what I'm going to do is press dot append round brackets, and I'm going to add in the new thing I want to add on top of this list. So I want to go and add in milk, and then I'm going to go and print out my shopping list. We do that, and we can see we got eggs, we got ham, and we also have milk attached straight onto the end here. And you can see that milk and bread, or whatever we did in our example, it basically just adds up on those numbers here. Another operation that we don't really need to use as often, but it's very useful to keep in mind here, is going to be the dot remove counterpart to it. So let's go and say, it's like, oh, never mind, we got plenty of eggs at home. I'm going to go shopping list dot remove the eggs. And do be careful, you have to remove something that does exist. If you don't have eggs in your list, then there is no way to remove it. Let me just make sure that I have that in order. When we run that, we have just the ham and the milk. And the numbers, if you notice, all get reset. They get started off again so that the numbers look proper. Finally, there's one more cool thing that says, how big is our list? And this one here is actually just following regular intuition. So we got eggs, we got ham. I'm going to get rid of these operations here. Let's just start with a very simple list so that we don't have to worry about that. So we got eggs, we got ham, we got milk. How big is this list? The size of this list is print. And then the way we get this is what we use len, which is short for length. We go open round brackets and we say what we want to get the list size of. And I'm going to go and get the list of my shopping list. And I did add some extra spaces here, mostly for me to point it out more clearly, but you guys can skip that. And we have the length tells us that there are 3 items in the list. And yes, this one does follow just regular human intuition here. So you can say that there's 1, 2, 3. Yes, that is the length of the list. There are going to be 3 items. It's only the index that matters with that weird 0 offset thingy. Okay, and there's a couple other things here. We got index to go and tell you where the numbers are, sort, which modifies our list to put them in order, and reverse, but we're not going to ever need to worry about those in these classes here. Instead, I'd like to go and focus on this first example here, where we're going to go and make sure that we get a list of numbers, one for each of these different coordinates here, and then we're going to have them all change to the size of your mouse X. I want you guys to go and focus on getting those 4 different bar graphs, or those 4 different bars first, and find a way how you can go and get a list working with that first. Okay, let's take 15 minutes and try that out. Anybody able to go and get those 4 rectangles drawn? Okay, fantastic. Seeing some people popping off here saying that they're successful. For those of you guys who didn't quite finish off, I did write up the code right here. And let me just quickly go and show you. So basically I got my size, my setup, etc. And then I got y chords, which is my y coordinates. And then I got a 100, 175, 300, 375. And basically what I did is I said the rectangle, the top left corner starts at x is 0, y is going to be based on that list value here. So y chords of 0, my first rectangle is going to be drawn at index 0, which is 100. And then I'm going to extend it out to be mouse x large here and 25 tall. And then the second rectangle is mostly the same, except I said, please draw it at 175. And then my third one's going to be the number 2 here. My fourth one's going to be the number 3. And I think that that's pretty cool. We're able to go and get these 4 rectangles drawn. But I think I already saw some of you guys jumping into this, and I have to wholeheartedly agree. Doesn't this seem kind of annoying when you have to go and copy paste all these lines like this? I mean, yeah, 4 of them's not that bad, but aren't you guys glad I didn't ask you guys to go and draw 100 of these rectangles? Because oh my gosh, I'd spend all day. I'd take this line here and I'd copy paste, 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 paste a billion times, and then I have to go and edit each of these numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. And it's rather irritating when I have to go and repeat all this code like this. So luckily, Python and programming in general offers a very cool way how to go and get around this issue of typing out the same code over and over and over again. And we call those things loops. And basically the idea of a loop is that we're going to just take a chunk of code and we're going to repeat it over and over and over again for a specified number of times here. And there's 2 flavors of loops. There's the for loop, there's the while loop. There might be the do while loop in Python, can't remember, but we're going to be sticking with the for loop, which is by far one of the most common ones here. And so the way that we can really think about loops is that you do an operation on something and then you move on. So if you're at a dentist, you actually probably recognize the whole concept of looping here, whether or not you recognize it or not. So you say that the dentist does these 4 different steps here. Step number 1, they're going to go and check out your tooth, probably the molar way back here. They're going to go and check it out, see if it's clean it off, and then they go to the next tooth. And then they're going to go and clean it off, and then they're going to go to the next tooth and clean it off, and go to the next tooth and clean it off, and go to the next tooth and clean it off. And they're going to work their way through all 32 of the human teeth that you got in there. And you don't see somebody writing out dentist program code, writing out all 32 lines of code. No, they only write it in just 2 lines of code, which is pretty darn spiffy. Oops. Before I go and show you the quick question on that, because I think that you guys would appreciate it if you guys could see an example of what this looks like. We can also go and show off what it looks like to be inside a shopping center and trying to go and purchase all these items. Remember how I printed out my shopping list? Let's go and say we actually start buying them now. I got my shopping list. It has eggs, it got ham, it got milk. And I'm going to say, print time to go buy. And what I want to do now, I want to go and grab that first item, eggs. I want to go and grab that. I want to grab the second item, ham, and grab that. Grab the third item, milk. And the way I'm going to type this out here is I'm going to say for item in shopping list, colon, press enter, and you're going to notice it'll do that indent thing again. And what we're going to do here is say print now buying, and we're going to print out that item. And let me go and show you what this code does, and I'll explain it as what we see. We're going to see time to go buy some stuff here. We're going to go now buying the eggs, now buying the ham, now buying the milk. I was able to go and say, go through each one of these items one at a time automatically by using this little statement here. For the thing that, the individual item we want to talk about inside the big list, colon, due to operation on this. And item is a convenient name to keep track of, but honestly, I could have chose any name I want, so I can use like X instead, and it would do the exact same job. For all the X entries inside of my shopping list, go do these things here. So I have a quick question coming up next, but before I do that, how are you guys feeling about this? Any questions about lists so far? Or sorry, loops so far? Okay, I am going to trust that there are no questions here. And just to make sure that we stay on schedule, I'm going to pop over to the quick question and turn it around on you guys. So let's take a minute, 30 seconds to go and work through this code here. We got the number X and we're going to be using a for loop here. What are we going to print at the end of this?
The poll will close in 10 seconds. And everyone chose 10.
Fantastic. You guys are so good at this. This one I don't need to explain in high detail, but just to recap, we basically said for the first number in numbers, grab the number 2 and then add it onto here. Then grab the second number, 3, add it onto our list, grab the third number, 5, and add it in. And if you guys are noticing, we've actually written up our own way in Python how to quickly go and sum up a list of numbers, which is actually a pretty darn common thing and quite useful to know. And so basically, I think that I've already shown you this, so I'm going to go and just talk about this really quickly, is that we have a way how to rapidly work through lists and loops. Lists and loops really go together like bread and butter, because lists are really, really big things with a lot of very, very similar entries. And then loops are the way that you can quickly go and run through the entire thing without having to go and write the code a bajillion times. And so I think I've already shown this exact example, so I'm going to go and skip over this one. Now, the question you guys might be asking is like, all right, when should I use loops? And the answer, especially for when we're working with trinkets, is that we want to go and use loops whenever we want to do multiples of something. I notice a lot of people are making mistakes when they start using loops instead of the draw function. Draw function runs 60 times per second, but loops in the meanwhile runs roughly on the order of magnitude of 100,000 times per second. They're really, really, really fast. And they're so good at making multiple things show up all at once. And so when do we want to go and use loops though, is basically a more fundamental answer is whenever you see repetitious code. I think I was talking about earlier, if you remember example number 1 or exercise 1, these 4 bars, I said that this is kind of annoying. I don't like the idea of having to go and type out these 4 different lines. What I'm going to do instead, let's see if my slides goes and shows this link. What I'm instead going to do here is first find all those repetitive entries here. And then I'm going to go and replace them. So that y list of 0, y list of 1, y list of 2, y list of 3. What I can go and do is just yoink out the common thing here. It's just, or the one changing part is that number y from the y list. And I can go and type in for y in y list. And I just simply drop the number y right into there. And it's incredibly powerful when you do this. Let me just go and break it down into individual pieces just to go and show it off. So for y in y list, we're going to go and draw that rectangle. So first time round, we're going to go and grab that first number. I see in my example here, it's going to be 50. So it says rectangle 0, comma, what y value are we using? We're going to be using 50. Draw that mouse X 30. Go back up to the beginning again because we still have more numbers. This time, 135. Put that into that rectangle. Go back up. Use 275. Go down. Rectangle 0 at 275. Go back up. This time it's going to be 400. Rectangle 0 at 400. Go back up. Or we check. Okay, that's all the numbers, and we're going to go and exit the loop now. And we just keep on going. With that, that gives me just enough space to go and talk about this exercise here. I am going to give you guys 14 minutes to go and see if you guys can figure out how to get these following circles. Don't worry about this one too much. I want to focus on the end of session exercises if you guys run out of time. Let's go. Well then, welcome back, guys. How are you guys feeling about that exercise? Let's see a show of hands. How many of you guys were able to go and get all the circles drawn, at least? Don't worry about movement. How many of you guys were able to just get them drawn? Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm glad to hear. And how many of you guys also got it to be moving as well? Nice, nice. I'm seeing there's a lot of successful people in here. I think I have to admit that this is honestly one of the smart groups that I've been working with here, that really people are just getting these things really nicely. And that's amazing. And that's going to go and give me the opportunity to just jump straight into our last part here before we jump back into the breakout rooms for our final exercises. So the last thing I wanted to go and talk about is that you could put any amount of code inside the for loops. And quite often inside professional program, you probably would see like hundreds of lines of code sit inside a for loop at a time. And I'm just going to go and show you a quick example that you could, for example, put an if statement inside the code. And that if statement applies for every single element within. I'm not going to go and talk about it in huge detail, but let me just quickly show you. Let's say that we have a series of x coordinates here, and we're going to go and take this code for x in these x coordinates. We're going to take the first one, which is going to be 40. And if it's greater than 150, then we're going to go and set the color of it to be red, otherwise yellow. Looks like this one here, 40 is less than 150, so obviously not true. And we're going to use the else statement. We're going to draw that. And then we're just going to repeat this over and over again. That x, fundamentally speaking, is going to be that number inside this list of x positions every single time. And you can see that you keep on clicking through. 120 is not greater than 150, so it goes inside that else statement. Finally, 160 is greater than 150. And so that is where we draw this red circle here. And then we grab the number 200 and we grab that. 200 is bigger than 150. So yes, we're going to go and fill that to be red. And I wanted to go and basically say that you have the power to put anything inside a for loop. And now I'm going to go and turn it back over to you guys. Promise that you guys get some time to go and work on coding. And basically, these challenges here test your ability to understand how can you apply for loops in some more creative ways here. This one on the right here looks very similar to what you guys just done, but you guys will need to learn how to use the append function. You guys ready for this? We're going to go and take 25 minutes to go and wrap this up, and then I'll pull you guys back in for some final announcements. Okay, let's go. Well then, that's got to be the fastest I've seen people return to breakout rooms. Fantastic. That gives me just a couple more seconds here to go and make announcements. So first things first, it turns out that I actually made a mistake when talking about session number 0 about what gifts we are giving out. Amazon gift cards are no longer on the table. Instead, what we are offering, I think, is a pretty fantastic opportunity here. You guys heard of Udemy? You've probably seen at least a billion ads for Udemy out there. What we're offering now is that the top 3 students with the most Ignite points at the end of, well, not our 8 weeks, but at the end of our 4 weeks, 8 sessions here, will be given access to 2 Udemy courses from a selection of courses of our pickings here. And so if you guys are interested in doing that, fantastic choice and chances for you guys to get involved. The Ignite points themselves that you guys got so far, they're going to stay the exact same. So don't worry about that. It's just that the prize is going to be different. And yeah, if you do want to go and see a different course added to the list, give us a shout and we will see if we approve of it. Then yeah, we will go and authorize you to go and take that class instead. But yep, just a quick difference on what points we are or what rewards we're giving out. And this should be applied to our session 0 slides already. So you should be able to find those. Anywho, other than that, I think that I'm out of session 4 announcements here. The only thing I wanted to show you is that you guys have the power to recreate an entire Pong game. Last time you guys got the paddle and the ball, now you guys got the colliding bricks. That, in my opinion, is super interesting and some crazy stuff you can do there, albeit it does require some creativity to get it done. With that then, I am going to go and wrap it up here. Yeah, there should be a leaderboard, Toby. I am going to go and post a leaderboard on Discord once I find it. I got to verify that we've got it all working behind the scenes because we actually have some complex code operating to make that happen and everything like that. Once I get that verified, I'll send it off to you guys. Thanks, Dan. I think that we can wrap it up right here. Feel free to poke us with questions on Discord as usual. And with that, I'm going to open up one more poll just to see how we did today. And once you finish that, you guys can get on out of here. All right. Thanks, guys, for voting. With that, yeah, I will see you guys all on Monday then. Enjoy your weekend. Okay. All right, with that,